So a client of mine asked me to look into a company to because they were going to have a meeting with them to build some PHP software. And when Mark asked me to talk, he asked me to talk on open source. And that's such a large area to cover. So I wanted to start with something that was very specific to everybody. And what I'm going to talk about are profiles. So even though like we were all on MySpace and the other Tom Anderson had your profile, like I don't think that's funny. I mean, maybe it is funny. Anyway, I'm going to talk about profiles today and how we all need better profiles. The company that I was asked to research was Software Technology Group. Now, I don't care anything about what this website says. Okay, all I care about is what are they doing? So I searched Google for a Software Technology Group Utah. Let's change that to GitHub. And STG-TUD. I don't know what TUD is, but it looks like it's not Utah, that's for sure. Okay, so the name of this company is so generic that, and here's Dresden, there's like, we're not gonna find like their stuff by searching for Software Technology Group. It's just a bad company name. So if we go back to their website here, well, this front page doesn't have it. So let's go careers. No, that doesn't have it either. So I wanted to see their GitHub account. If you look at their website, it's stgconsulting.com. So I searched for STG Consulting on GitHub. And it's not there. They don't have a GitHub account. Okay, so I got a hit for Brian Hansen here. And clicking on him, he has like just a little tiny bit of work that he's done that is listed here. Now you can configure this block of colors to show work that you've done on private repositories. But because Software Technology Group does not have a GitHub account, I think they have all their source control in a private repository, like they're in a private Git management system. But I want to, if we look here, he lists stgconsulting.com as his business, which is not true. He did it wrong. stgconsulting.com is his website. His business name should be Software Technology Group. All right, and he is the Director of Practice Management. That's a pretty big title. Let's see what he does. So we go under repositories. He's got Spring here, Spring Security Conference. Looks like he may have talked on that. And he has his Spring Security course on Pluralsight. So he's got a Pluralsight course, okay? But it's on Spring, so it's on Java. Here we have more Pluralsight work. We have other repositories. They don't mean much to me here. Here's one, Conference One. This is probably also talking at a conference. And so I want to see what has he got here that's open source. And I have to go all the way down to Norm Game to find it. So the first thing I do is I check the branches. I want to know, what did he contribute to Norm Game? Why is Norm Game on his GitHub profile? And there's no branches here. He hasn't contributed. We have 8 commits here. Let's look at the actual thing. 8 commits as well. So there's just nothing there. I don't know why he has Norm Game on here. And he didn't, I want to know, what does he do? I don't want to know what has he seen. If you just show me everything you've seen, we're going to run out of bandwidth. He's got a few others, but mostly we can see everything is Spring based, and he's working with Java here. So he's not a good example of a PHP developer, which is what we were looking for in Software Technology Group. So I'll go back and see what else I can find here. And I find some gists. I find Blake here. Now Blake's name is Riplikash. I don't know what that means. It's probably his like World of Warcraft name for all I know. And I don't think that's very professional. I consider GitHub to be the LinkedIn for programmers. If you want to show what you do and you want to show what you've done and you want to show who you are, then you need a good profile on GitHub. So Replicash here has his email as STG Consulting. He actually has the company name correctly. He doesn't list the company website, and he lists where he's located, which is fine. That's okay. And he's got a nice picture of himself. So I like that. I like having a real picture. If this was a picture of his dog, then that's unprofessional for me. Under his repositories, he's got git ignore right here at the top. And this was updated 2020 June. So it's been a year, but let's see what he did. So we go git ignore. Oh, there's a lot of branches here. Okay, so which one of the branches is his? I can't tell by just looking at them. So I'm going to go to the git ignore repository, and everything here is 10 months or older. And we see the same list of branches here. So this is just a fork of the repository, and he hasn't done anything. There's no contributing here. This is not something he does, it's something he saw. Let's go back to his repository. Oh, let's look at the overview here. He's got like a few things here and there, and we can see contribution activity in private repositories. That's just fine. But he doesn't have very much. So I'm to like sum this up. It's these are the only two people that I could find at STG Consulting. Neither one of them does PHP, and neither one of them contributes to open source. In my opinion, by looking at these three things, that is the lack of GitHub repository for the company and these two profiles, this looks to me like a company that uses open source and does not give back. So this is not a company that I want to do business with. I want to show you an example of a project now on GitHub. And this is also for another client. And
so you are aware that STG is actually a recruiting firm, right?
Are they? Because yeah. When you look at their website, here, they do have careers, but they have software expertise.
Yeah.
So nothing about this says we hire. It says for our consultants.
Yeah, so they have consultants that they hire, that they farm out to other companies.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
just saying.
It is what it is there. I wanted to find out more about this company, and this is the way I did it. And this is how I got to this talk, is I wanted to measure the quality of the companies and people that I work with based off of their GitHub profiles. So we have another company here, or another, I want to go to a project now. And here we can see they've got nice ticket numbers with everything, but we see here a ticket number that doesn't have a description with it. Fortunately, I can hover over that and it gives me the description. But the way that I program is I always group tickets by pull request, and then the pull request references the ticket. And the commits themselves don't reference the ticket because it might take more than one commit to fix a ticket. So let's look at their pull requests. They've had 8 pull requests total. And these were, I think that these were all by outside people. And it's certainly not the developers that have been working on it. So we can see 8 years, I'm sorry, 7 years, 5 months, 3 days, last month. So here's one from 3 days ago, which seems to be the newest. And if we look at the commits, there's been 9,200 commits. That's a lot of commits. That's a big project. But there's only 8 pull requests. So we can see work that was done today here. We can see that they added a comment with it, and we can see here that a comment was not added with it. But we don't see the, here we have 2 commits with the exact same message. And personally, I try to avoid that. So this is not a project that I would I would contribute to just on my own. Like if I came across this and I'm like, oh, like, can I use this for my stuff? I would look at those pull requests and want to ask more questions. Okay. Another thing about this is there's no composer.json file here. So this, and you can see a bunch of PHP files in the root directory here. So there is no way to like put files or even like a Docker file outside of the project root. Everything is on the root. So this is obviously an older project. And if we look into like, let's just jump into plugins, something recent, 5 months ago, ACLs. This has namespaces, that's good. But if we look at something like their cart, there's no namespace here. So this looks like a project that, although it's had a lot of active development on it, they haven't taken the time to take a step back and refactor the application to be up to the standards that PHP allows for us to code in today. Now I want to go into some organizations that I think are good. Here's our user group. We have 3 repositories here. We'll get into that in a minute. First, we look up here, we've got a nice picture, describes a user group, nice description, or good description, good name. It tells where we're from, which is Salt Lake. I like that it says Salt Lake City and not Lehigh, but that's just me. It has the link to the website, and it has an email for the group. This is the minimum that you need for your organization. I'm not saying that you've only done the minimum. I'm saying what you've done is the right way to do it, and that anything else is gravy. The repositories here, we got a UPHP website, a Git workshop, which was from 2017. We can see that here. And then from 2014, a wiki. So it's nice to see older repositories in here. It's nice to see things that like this Hacktoberfest. I was a part of this, so I know what that was. But there's nothing here that is extraneous, and there's nothing that was somebody just saw. This is all things that are directly related to the organization. This is a company I used to work with, and I'm going to use them as an example because we see some things here that maybe they are just like linking to things that they saw. Maybe they're maybe not. The header here, everything is great. Zend Framework, this is an odd one to see right at the top, and it was updated January 25th. So let's see what that says. And Ad Sherpa, he's the CTO there, and he updated Composer JSON. So this is a custom build of Zend Framework that they use in their applications, which is great. This is exactly what belongs under an organization like this, or under a company. There's cores, there's Zend session. Now the Zend session, Zend config, these ones catch my eye. So let's look at Zend config. And we've got Matthew Earl Finney made a commit, and we've seen a lot of commits here. So let's check the branches. We got develop, GitHub pages, and legacy. So there's probably nothing there. but we can always run over to the original and see what it has. Same thing. So there's not been any, and then you can check the commit log to see if there's anything at the top that maybe we missed, to see if this was contributed to. So in this case, Zend config is just something they saw and not something that they're using. They may be using it internally, but I don't see a reason for them to keep this on their page, and I think it's distracting. I like that they have some things that are good, but there's some things that aren't so good. There's a small number of repositories here, which is nice. Now, this company doesn't provide software to other organizations. It's all internal to the company. So they're not good. So what they have here is not something someone else would come along and use. But I still don't see the use for having a Zend config here. Okay, now I want to go to some really good organizations. Docker is in the business of providing software to other people. And you can see right at the top, they have pinned repositories. Oh, they have a nice long description here. They have their Twitter handle, as well as the other information, and verified. And we've verified that they control these domains. So in the same way you verify your domain with, say, Google, they've done the same thing with GitHub. The repositories that are pinned at the top show those that they think are most important, or most that a lot of people would want to come here looking for. And that's really nice to see. It's like, okay, we've thought about you. We know you're going to be our visitor, and here's what we're providing. And and putting it right there at the top for us. And then if we look through their projects, there's nothing so far that's external. Everything is things they've built. Here's one. Widget packages, Microsoft Community Windows Package Manager Manifest Repository. Okay, so they may have contributed to that repository. And this is going to be harder for me to like figure out, because it's going to involve who's involved in the organization as to who made the commits. So this is where using the branches comes in handy. We've got 6 branches, and then jumping back to Microsoft to see if those branches are there. So this is an odd one to have there. And maybe it's just the exception to the rule. But in this first page of repositories, there's nothing else that somebody else wrote. This is all what they're offering you. I want to show a minimum example now. The Anti-Phishing Working Group is one of the companies that I build with, and we keep track of all the phishing websites that get reported. We've got the website here. We've got an email address. Nothing fancy, just it's there. I'd like to see a description, because just having the title there it's descriptive, but for me, it's not descriptive enough. We've got, oh, you know what? I can't do that. Got private repositories in there. Excuse me. Let's try that again. Okay. So we can see a dozen plus repositories here. There's one here this is an odd one to see. All of these are built in-house, and a lot of these are used for the customers. So this is how to get data out of the system using wget, and it's an example. And here's a post example. And with this one exception, everything else here is for the customer. So this is a nice minimum, like for someone that provides software, but also provides a service. So they're providing the software for the service through their GitHub page. Now, I believe that anybody who deals in software in any way that they need to keep track of software that they build, whether it's kept track of on GitHub or not, they should have an organization on GitHub. It's free to create an organization and just list your information there. So unlike STG, you can like find that company and see, okay, at least they're on GitHub. Okay, now I'm going to show one that's personal to me. This is the Doctrine Repository, and it has planet Earth as the location, which is true. And it has the Doctrine project link, and the URL has been verified. There's on GitHub, you can request people to sponsor you. So we have this little sponsor thing here. Now, some things we're going to see here that that didn't stand out to me in the other profiles we've looked at are the top languages. So we can see PHP, some Python, HTML, CSS, Shell. So we see what they work with, what the topics are. And there's the Hacktoberfest again. So they were involved in the same thing that our group was involved in. And it has 37 people involved, and it has a bunch of sponsors down here too. So this is a big project. Not as big as Docker, but it's still pretty big. If we look through the repositories, everything belongs to this organization. At least for the first page. And you can see that the repositories are really actively developed. And that's a good sign of a good organization. This is a company I would do business with. They list the people. I'm probably on there somewhere. Oh no. Well, I'll look into that. So even though the location is kind of cheeky, it's still good to like show a little bit of personality in your profile. And by listing Planet Earth, I think that's that draws you into what's being offered. So I want to go into a couple examples of people that are really good. And I might be cheating here, but Linus Torvalds has an excellent profile. He has popular repositories at the top, which is, he only has 6 repositories total, but popular is listed first. And so that's kind of like in the setup of GitHub to list to pick those repositories to list there. You can see that he's actively developing. He's like it looks like he had a vacation in February. Like the guy's a machine. It lists what his company is and where he's from. He doesn't have an email address here. I think that's great. The guy probably gets way too much email anyway. You can see his followers and following, and this is the kind of information that I don't look at, but if you're into social media and you like to measure people with those metrics, then that's there for you as well. We know that Linus runs Linux. So let's look at what he's contributed to Linux. It's nothing. He doesn't have any branches here. Now, I'm pretty sure the reason for that is the Linux repository is hosted at another website, like git.kernel.org is where I believe that's where the repository is. And so the work that he does, or any branches that he creates don't get created on his local copy, but this does get updated periodically. 8 hours ago was the last update. And so it's surprising to me that he doesn't have Git listed as one of his repositories. But I like that if he's no longer directly involved with the development of Git, that's fine. If he can hand that project off to someone else, more power to him. Now I'm going to go with Gregory. Gregory is a member of the Doctrine organization. And he's got a little cartoon picture here that shows personality, but at least it's not a picture of his kids, you know? This is a professional website, and your kids better not be doing the coding when I hire you. Under his contributions, you can see he's very active. He's from Paris. He lists the company here. If I was signed in, I could view his email address, and he's got his own website. And let's look at what he's been working on. So the Doctrine ORM is most recent. Let's see what he's got here. So he's got a lot of branches. So let's say feature flush many documents. I really like having feature like prefixed with all of my branches. It's either a hot fix or it's a feature, and there's nothing else. But I don't see him here. So maybe that's a bad branch example. We can always go back to the original repository and look at the branches there. And there are some, but there's nothing under feature. So maybe he pulled that down from another remote. So now I'm going to talk about myself. I don't want to like spend the rest of the time, like an hour and a half talking about myself, but I'm going to mention myself. Tom H. Anderson. Everything about me is Tom H. Anderson. If you look at my email address, it's Tom H. Anderson. If you look at my GitHub, it's Tom H. Anderson. If you look at my name, it's Tom H. Anderson. So I make that consistent across all my platforms. And this is my profile. I have, I brag here. I'm definitely not modest, and I'm okay with that. So I want to show that as a personality trait here. Independent contractor is my business. You can, we have where I live, like my email address, my homepage, and organizations. Now, there's only 3 listed here, which is odd because I actually have this many organizations. But I don't have an answer for that right now. All of these organizations are organizations I own, while the rest of the organizations like San Francisco PHP Meetup Group is an organization I belong to. Looking at the organizations that a user has, I think is a great way to measure like their activity and their contributions to open source, as well as just looking at their at the contribution over time. And so that wraps up a lot of what I wanted to say about open source, is that open source is big business now. And LinkedIn is great for keeping a personal profile. Sorry, just reading what Ben has to say.
Sorry, I didn't mean to distract you.
That's okay. It was my Jaji coin, actually. So I would really encourage you. I don't know. There's one other thing I want to point out about my profile. I have 153 repositories here, and I've contributed to every single one of them. So if you go to any repository on my profile, you can use those steps that I showed you to find exactly what I contributed to the project that I forked that repository from. A good example of that is this one. This is one of them I'm in charge of. And you can see all my features here, all my hot fixes. This is I've had this repository in my profile for a long time, and I've made a lot of contributions to this repository. And I have a nice picture here, and I got this little working from home icon. I don't know where that came from, but I think that's neat to see that GitHub added that. So I would ask you to review your profile and ask, is it professional? And will somebody want to hire me based off of what they see on my profile? And can you represent what you've done with your profile? That is, can I dig down into your repositories and see what have you contributed back to open source? Are you just using open source, or do you contribute back to open source? And that's what I've got to say about open source. Mark?
Thank you, Tom. I have a few questions. I'm just watching. One of my biggest challenges has been once I find repositories, how do you get started with contributing to it? What have you found has been easy? So you showed, you have 153 repositories, you contribute to all of them. How do you get up to speed and contribute to those individual repos?
I break them. So I'll go out and I'll find a repository that I want to use, and I'll import that into my project, and then I'll start using it. And when I get to a point that it doesn't work like I want it to work, that's when I fork the repository and I start to build on top of it. So for me, I code due to necessity. I think if you just decide I want to contribute to open source, and you go and you find an open source project and you fix one of their bugs, that's okay, but it doesn't personally invest you in the functioning of that repository.
I think that's what I've done more in the past is, I think of one recently somewhat recently, where it wasn't, where it didn't have a PHP 7.4 version. It was not compatible with 7.4, and so I went and made some updates for them and merged it. That's the kind of stuff I generally have done in the past, at least. Or
yeah, that's really helpful. Because for me, even now, I recently moved a couple of Doctrine projects to PHP 8.0, but there was some real problems with the Laminus libraries and annotations. So it took a few months before we could get those moved over to 8.0. But I wasn't in a hurry to move them because I didn't need them to be 8.0 for me. My users did, and so I helped my users along. But I like to encourage contributions. So if someone comes along and says, hey, I need 8.0, then I can say, well, look, this person tried to do 8.0, but we failed. And can you help pick up the work from there?
So I got a question for you. My username was based off of a business that I was running as an independent contractor that I no longer use anymore. So it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to people. But I know GitHub is kind of you really shouldn't change your username. We let you do it, but it's not a good idea. So do you have a suggestion on that?
Yeah, well, I would move everything over to a new username. Now, I tried to get a your organization name one time, and somebody registered the name 3 days before me, and I could never get it because I just didn't have it. So I would, as soon as you log off here, I think you should go on GitHub and get the name you want.
Okay.
That's the first step, is actually getting the name, and then move your repositories over to that account, and that might take a little bit of time. But you'll just have to pull each one down and then do a git fetch and then push all that back up to your to your new account. And then from your old account, just say where it says like a link, instead of having it to a website, have it be a link to your new account. And then make notes on there that says this has been moved to this profile name.
Okay.
So Tom, question, when you come up on a repository, let's say it's a little legacy, we'll say, do you generally find repository maintainers follow PSR coding standards, or is it, have you found some resistance to that, or?
I haven't found any resistance, and I find that a lot of people have PHP-CS built into their continuous integration. So even, and at a minimum, they're going to be at PSR1 and PSR2. And at a Mac, and then the next step is, I think it's PSR12, is that right? And I haven't like migrated to PSR12 because I've been on the Doctrine coding standard, which is even more strict than that. So in my personal projects, if I want to be really anal, I'll pull down the Doctrine coding standard and then run that in my continuous integration. But if you're saying, like, if I just go to a repository that is like not using braces around their one-line if statements, then I'm probably not going to contribute to it.
Yeah, I've worked on some projects where they're like, we like PSR and we follow most of it, but there's some, you know, some places that we don't follow it perfectly and that kind of thing. And so, and all of those that are saying that, like Tom was saying, that they are PSR 1 and 2, they just don't quite hit 12. Or, you know, because there's certain things that they don't like about it or whatever.
Well, a lot of that can be like I feel it's important to take a step back and stop working on your project every once in a while and refactor it. And refactoring for coding standards is a good way to improve the code base. And if you configure it right, you can have a lot of your PHP-CS problems fixed with PHP-CBF. It automatically fixes them for you.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. The other thing that I do is I use with Phpstorm, they actually have a way that you can set the code styling to be like based off of PSR 12. And so I'll use that and then just use its auto formatting, which doesn't get it all, but it helps.
I think that's great. I just don't see it in continuous integration. So if you like add that to your continuous integration, then you have another layer of quality checks.
Oh
The
yeah.
neat thing about Phpstorm though is it has built-in support for PHP code sniffer. And so if it detects a phpcs.xml in your repo, number one, like you're probably already doing that as part of continuous integration if you've got it checked in there, but it will read that and then it'll make that part of its, like what it underlines. Like if you have extra snips in there that are like in addition to PSR 12 or PSR 2, then it'll let you know if things are out. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, that is cool.
Oh, thanks for the tip, Ben. I'll go and fix that on my
Yeah, it's a pain that like you have to go to it for every organization that you're in if you want to show their badge on your profile.
Okay.
Any other questions for Tom? Thank you, Tom. It was really good. Thank you. Appreciate your time and effort in that. Reminder, we do have some more Sunshine PHP elephants for speakers. I'll be shipping this one off to Tom. Just checked, we got 2 more. I've got 2 more to send off the next couple of speakers. So if you're you're lined up the next couple months, we'll get those out to you as a thank you for speaking to the group.